Welcome to Yerba Mate Talks.
Hello, welcome to Yerba Mate Talks. Today we're talking about how we can change our mind. Gonna do a short stream today. I've got to do a demo after this, and I'm not fully prepared, so I can't stream too long today. But I did want to jump on and at least chat about something. Um, I will, of course, put the link in the chat if anyone wants to join the stream to be able to chat about changing our mind. Or maybe there's a particular subject you want to change my mind about, and we can go from there. We have, of course, often cover a chapter of the book we're doing, but I am not going to cover a chapter today. I'm in a hurry today. I've gotta end pretty quick. I want to make sure I give time to people to be able to jump on. I think Max may be able to jump on a little bit as well, but I want to be able to chat with people and to discuss the subject and give that opportunity. No one wants to chat. We may end pretty early, but like I said, I've got that demo. I'm not completely ready for it, and it's kind of important that I get that done today. So, what I wanted to chat about was international law. The reason I wanted to chat about this international law is on the stream the other day, I was having a discussion with someone else about international law, and I don't really know much about international law, right? I'm not particularly an expert, but sort of my overall opinion of the such subject is that I was like, it just seems so worthless, It just seemed like it doesn't matter because why would anyone follow it? What's this international body that is going to do anything about it? And so I was kind of arguing that international law doesn't mean anything, and whether someone follows it or doesn't follow it shouldn't matter. And if you're at war, you're at war, and what does it matter? And I was taking a pretty aggressive stance on that. And then I was thinking about it more and more and more, and just thinking about the idea. And I think I've changed my mind a little bit on it. It's probably trivially true that if no one enforces international law, that obviously it's not that valuable. Okay, so if there's no enforcement mechanism, there's no matter. Doesn't obviously that's true, but I guess it could be said that it does have some value. That what the world is saying is, if you break in international law, we're going to be upset at you. And you say, well, what value does that have? And you go, well, it could have some value, right? You want to be friends with other people in the world for trade, or maybe they're not going to sell you certain things, or if a business deal is 50-50, they're going to go with the group that's not breaking international law, and people are going to kind of avoid doing business with you. So even if by breaking international law, you're not necessarily going to have the whole rest of the world, the international community come drop bombs on you, it might matter. The social signal very well could have some value, and so therefore the international community trying to get together to make international law um, makes sense on why it sort of has the enforcement mechanism is just like shame, and we don't like you and we won't do business with you. Obviously, there's some serious limitations on that, right? Like Russia's breaking every international law in the world, and tons of people are still buying their oil and gas and so on and so forth. Europe still buys gas from uh, them because I'm sure they don't feel like they have much option. So um, maybe there is some value in international law, but it doesn't have as much value as maybe you'd like. You're like, oh, we'll all agree on these rules and then we'll all obey them. No, it's not like that. It's like we'll all agree on these rules, and if you break them, the rest of us will like socially shame you in in some way. And so that seems like that could matter a little bit. I can also understand why some people don't sign on to international law. You know, why There's people that say, I'm not going to even pretend I'm going to follow these because I'm going to break them when I want to. And I suppose that is always sort of true no matter what. We do all sort of break, we all do sort of say, that's true for every treaty we have. We're gonna follow it until we don't, I guess. Hey, hello, dudes, dudettes, and Dr. J. Hey, Max, how's it going? A little more hellos. Um, and hey, CJ. Oh, Max said he is going to be able to jump on. Maybe we can talk little more international law. He says he's thinking my mind change here might be worth it. Um, the value of fries from Five Guys. Oh, look, someone reminding us that Five Guys fries are terrible, and that you shouldn't eat them because they're mushy and squishy and gross, and they're not crunchy and they're oily. And when they put them in the bag becomes oily. If I remember correctly. Good to see you. Good to see you. Feel free to come jump on and argue about that. As a matter of fact, I was just at a restaurant like last let's see, would have been Tuesday night to watch I was at like to watch a basketball game, and the NBA season started, and I was asking the person what their fries were like, and I made a Five Guys reference. Hey, are they like Five Guys, Terrible. And so yeah, Five Guys comes across, I guess. Hey, someone agrees with me. Five Guys is gross. Great. Love to see it. I'm not totally out on a limb there. Hey, hello, hello. Oh, Max, jumping on stage today. Like I said, Max, I only got a few minutes, so if anyone jumps off, I might kick you off because I want to be able to give another person a chance. But thank you for getting on here today, chatting. What are you thinking about my new thoughts on international law? Like, not that you and I either probably are experts. Maybe you know more about it than I do. I'm certainly not any kind of international law expert.
No, I was trying to kind of bring up the fact that we all kind of partake on international law because there's the aspect of what we were talking about the other day on international law being applied um, to conflicts and so on. But we do partake in international law when it comes to getting a passport, traveling to another country, when it comes to import and export. All of that is governed by international law. So there's kind of different aspects and different applications of
Mm-hmm.
that. And what comes to mind is the Nuremberg trials, when you have crimes so heinous that they count as crimes against humanity as a whole. That's when we get into the nit and grit of okay, well, what is international law?
Mm-hmm.
But there's also another aspect. You know how it sometimes gets brought up, this island of natives that they are cannibals, right?
Mm-hmm.
That no one can go to them because even if you go near with a helicopter, they launch spears and so on. Why is it that we don't just grab our machine guns and go and say like, hey, you're not supposed to eat people? It's
Yeah.
because a part of international law is also the self-governance of people. So even though we deem cannibalism as completely abhorrent, we don't just go and civilize these people because we accept that in their society they have the autonomy to govern themselves. So there's a fine line there between
It's super
uh,
tricky because we all might
yeah,
say, well, don't buy this product from the region where the Uyghurs are in China or something like that. We
yep,
usually don't say like, well, China has autonomy. They get to do this if they want to. I don't know if that's a perfect example, but we certainly would say things like we don't work with certain countries, or we don't, we're boycotting them, or whatever because of what they're doing. So it gets tricky, right? And when you say
yep,
international law runs like uh, passports and stuff, it's like every country doesn't accept every other country's passport, right?
correct.
So is there
But
broad
but we
general guidelines?
Yeah, but the visa system and the passport system, that is an agreement that it, that's an international agreement that this document is sort of an international ID for travel for people. So even though there's another layer of extra agreements, like for example, when you came to Uruguay,
Mm-hmm.
we have a national agreement between us that Americans don't need to get a visa to come to Uruguay. You can just hop on a plane and get here and stay 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
And for example, if you cross over to I don't know if any other country in South America has a no visa system with the US, but let's say hypothetically Argentina.
Mm-hmm.
Argentina has a no visa system. You could come to Uruguay, stay 3 months, go to Argentina, stay 3 months, or even one day, and
Mm-hmm.
then you come back, and that reset. You can stay for another
Mm.
3 months.
Interesting. Because like when I went to China, I had to get a visa, right? I had to get
Yes,
a tourist visa or whatever to be able to go there. So yeah,
I
you're saying there's just layers. It's like there's this general agreement that visas or passports work, but not every country is going to have the same rules around those. They still have the autonomy to reject certain countries like Canada could say, well, we accept most of these, but we don't accept passports from the U.S. We'll accept Mexicans, Mexico's passports, but not the U.S. So yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, no,
mhm,
international cooperation. I'm certainly a big fan. Obviously, you're talking, kind of when I was arguing, we were more in a
in
fighting
the war,
context.
yeah.
Yeah, the fighting context is really tough because the first missile that was shot, usually international law is already kind of being ignored at that point. So it's sort of the laws are already being broken, so it gets trickier. But I kind of feel like I was going too hard on the international law doesn't matter. It does matter. It
Mhm.
just it may not help us too much in the Russia-Ukraine war. You know.
Right, and the reason why we haven't the world hasn't intervened more in the conflict is that we are trading a balance in the escalation.
Mhm.
Any boots on the ground from any other army other than the Ukraine army would cause an escalation in the conflict.
Yeah,
So there,
so what it seems like I agree, and it seems like what we're doing has really nothing to do with any rules. It's just about what's going to make Russia matter, or will Russia respond in some way. And so all we're doing is some kind of game theory or whatever words you might want to use in order to say so we're not following any rules. We're just saying we'll try giving them these planes. We'll try giving them these missiles and see if Russia does something about it. And if they don't, maybe we'll give them more. And if they do, whatever. And then Russia flies some drones into Poland, and then see what's going to be the response there. So no one's following any rules really. We're just following the rules of
but
it's
we kind
bad
of
for.
are because I mean, Russia has chemical weapons. Why aren't they using their chemical weapons?
Well,
Because even though they're breaking one part of the international agreements of not attacking people,
yeah,
they're still not. They haven't deployed chemical weapons. They haven't deployed any nuclear weapons,
I
uh, uh, and that
I
kind of stuff.
yeah. I mean, so like us putting boots on the ground isn't breaking international law particularly, right? But we're not going to do it because it might escalate,
Yeah.
right? And I'm saying the reason they're not doing chemical weapons has nothing to do with the fact that it breaks international law. It's because they don't want to escalate. They don't want to escalate it, right? There's this weird mutual assured destruction. They're willing to like shoot missiles at each other's, infrastructure, but they don't want to bring in nukes or whatever because they realize like Putin probably won't survive nukes. So why would he want to? Why would he want to start down that road, right? So I don't think it has anything to do with international law. It's just this very weird escalation game theory thing going on, because we won't put boots on the ground, any of the other countries because we don't want it to escalate, even though that would be legal. We're not, we're not giving them. To be like during the Biden era, there was all these weapons we wouldn't give them because we were afraid it's going to escalate. We ended up giving them a lot of those. That had nothing to do with international law. So I think the reason they're not using nukes or chemical weapons isn't international law. It's just this weird escalation game theory that they're playing. You know, when
Right.
Russia decided to put drones into Poland, that broke the rules. But you know, they thought they could get away with it.
But what let's say, for example, hypothetically, Russia does throw a nuke into Ukraine, we would the enforcement, the escalation of the conflict would be cited based on international law. But you have John there,
Yes.
so we speak all the time. So I'll let you
Okay.
talk to him.
Okay. Thanks.
You
for
got it.
jumping on, Max. Yep.
Take care.
Hey, John, how's it going?
Good, thank you. Yourself, Dr. J?
I'm doing well. Doing well.
Good.
Yes.
I wasn't actually planning on joining this Change My Mind, but what you and Max were talking about, I was finding quite interesting, and it's actually somewhere where I have changed my mind a little bit. So I like listening to the trigonometry guys, Konstantin Kissin, predominantly, mainly because he's a fluent Russian speaker, and he covers quite a lot of the he understands, obviously, when Putin makes an announcement, we hear very little about what is translated from the announcements from like the Russian government.
Mm-hmm.
Our media is very sort of isolated. We just look at it from our perspective. One of the areas where I have changed my mind with regards to Putin and his Russia and his approach in Ukraine, completely disagree with it. I think the Ukraine is a sovereign state and it has the right to exist. But where I think there is a bit of a grey area that I didn't really have much of an appreciation for was the huge numbers of Russian speakers in the Donbass and Crimea region, which do actually, when you look at the polling when they've been surveyed, do actually want to be part of Russia proper. Now, that's just because the population wants to secede from a chunk of Ukraine doesn't mean that they get to do it. But it was also the fact that Putin was given assurances that that Ukraine would not join NATO, and NATO has been pushing right up against their border. Now, there's no justification for Russia invading Ukraine,
Right. Well,
but
and
it is
Ukraine,
at least a reason.
it's a bad, yeah, it's a reason. It's just a bad one, right? Because is Ukraine in part of NATO? No, they're not.
No, but Poland is, and supposedly Ukraine were involved. They were essentially saying that they wanted to be part of NATO, and that seems to have been enough for Putin, because the whole point was like a big part. Like Ukraine had 27,000 or 2,700 nuclear missiles that were formerly part of the USSR. And part of the agreement for Ukraine giving up those nuclear missiles was that Ukraine's sovereignty would be respected by Russia as long as NATO did not encroach upon the Russian, but as long as Ukraine did not become part of NATO. And then Ukraine started saying to NATO, hey, can we become part of NATO, please?
Sure, but the agreement was with NATO that they wouldn't let Ukraine. So it seems like the rule wouldn't have been broken until NATO said, yeah, you can be a part of it, right?
Yeah, that would have been true, but
so
I'd like
Ukraine
to say,
asking didn't break the rules.
No, and it is a massive overreaction that obviously has other motivations behind it. But I don't know. The placing Russia exclusively as the bogeyman here, and I think you need to make a distinction between Russia and Putin. Like Putin
I don't think so.
well because
are there any Russians that won't do what Putin tells them?
Well, no, because he's a
So there you go.
totalitarian.
So there you go.
It's
Well, this is a distinction without a difference, John.
maybe, but it's sort of like if you know, if Russian soldiers come along and kick down your front door and go, right, you've been conscripted, and if you don't go, we're going to send your 16-year-old kids.
Yeah.
Like you don't want to, you know.
Oh,
Um,
I agree. Unfortunately, sort of at least in the macro sense, if you are doing the bidding of the leader, you are a part of the group. That's it. I mean, whether you got,
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I realize there's probably Germans that were, not for doing what they were doing. It doesn't matter. You're gonna go shoot them anyway because they're fighting for the German army, and that's it, right? Even whether
Yeah,
they
if you
really, yeah,
yeah, if you, I mean, obviously it depends how you're looking at it. If you're looking at it
yeah.
purely from a consequentialist point of view, then yes, there is no distinction here. The consequences are the consequences, and that's the end of it.
Oh, I'm sure
Um,
people in Russia, there's all kinds of nuanced views. I don't, but
but
unfortunately, it may not matter. But
yeah, I guess where that would come into play is if, for example, there were a significant portion of the Russian population which were just doing what they were doing because they were terrified of Putin and they didn't actually want to be doing it. They didn't want to be invading Ukraine, etc. That wasn't something that the populace wanted. Then I suppose you could start looking at it and going, well, maybe a bit of regime change might be on the cards here,
sure.
because people what people don't seem to understand, and I don't know if even in Europe it's not particularly well understood, but the the GDP of Russia is about the same as Spain.
Mm-hmm.
It's massive in terms of its land mass, but
Mm-hmm.
in terms of its population and its economic power, it's actually not that great. It has channeled a huge amount of its economic it's invested heavily in its armed forces. Um, but even that has been with quite a lot of support from other Western nations. Ukraine has sort of stalled them. I think the expectation of Putin was that this was going to take 3 or 4 days. They were going to be in Kiev.
Mm-hmm.
They were going to take the whole of Crimea, and the rest of the world was going to go, "Hey, you evil bastard! What have you just done?" But then they didn't. They wouldn't want to. The thing that is the great leveler for Russia in terms of its, if Russia didn't have nuclear weapons, we'd have turned it over decades ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the nuclear weapons with the obviously I'm sure you're aware of the MAD, the mutually assured
Yeah,
destruction.
yeah, sure.
You know,
Yep.
and they, I don't know if this is true or not, but supposedly the yield of the larger Russian ICBMs are actually larger than that of the United States. But
My
not that that really
impression
matters.
is we both have so many that we could pretty much melt the world,
Yeah,
metaphorically.
I mean,
Is my
and
understanding.
like the UK, if they decided, you would only need to drop 3 or 4 on the UK, and you would render the whole thing fucking uninhabitable because it's a
Mm-hmm.
relatively small island.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, but it's one of those. I'm not so much changed my mind on Russia, but I
Mm-hmm.
have more of a, how can I put it? Like, and the no word is right because everything is like, if I said I had
Well,
some sort of like sympathy or empathy for like the fact that Russia is a bit pissed off that they felt that NATO was starting to get to the point where it feels to me like that is an excuse that Putin is using to try and justify his actions, because this is something that he wanted to do. He seems to be trying to piece back together the USSR
so
under his
here,
own in his own image.
here's a couple feelings I could understand. I could understand saying, I could see why it upsets Putin or Russia that they're smaller and weaker than they used to be. Britain surely has a similar thing going on. There's got to be a piece of you that's like slightly annoyed that you guys used to be so powerful, or maybe you're not old enough to have this feeling. I'm not sure, but Putin's
I,
certainly old enough to remember when his country was way more powerful and now it's a lot weaker than it used to be. And I'm sure that's annoying. Now, he should take those feelings and say, hey, probably what we were doing with the USSR and basically, taking people over was bad. And, yeah, sure, I guess it'd be nice to be more powerful, but I got to be able to put that behind me, right? In the same way, Britain
yeah.
needs to go, yeah, I'm
Well,
sure it was nice to be able to completely dominate India or whatever else, but, maybe it was just better that that's in the past at this point.
well,
But I guess I can understand that feeling if that's what you're referencing.
yeah. Well, let's put it this way. Like I doubt there are any Russian educational institutions that are doing like land acknowledgements or
Yeah.
like, oh they don't give a single shit about any of that. There's
Yeah.
there's no like Russia today is not like Germany today, where Germany has like a deep cultural scar in their cultural psyche, and like a deep shame of what they as a culture allowed to happen to, for example, the Jewish or the Gypsy populations in Germany. Like the Russians were just as ruthless, and there's no, at least to my knowledge, there's no part of their culture that's going, "Oh shit, we really fucked up there." Um, the Russian attitude, if they had to go to war with fascist Germany again and do everything that they did again, a lot of they take a deep pride in going, "We could do it again if we had to." Um, the kind of the necessity for sacrifice is much closer to the surface, it seems, in Russia, which is why there's not been so much of this a horrendous outpouring of like conscriptions and soldiers like being sent to the front lines. I think it's at the moment it's something like in like the average age of the frontline soldier in Ukraine is in their 50s, because they've just annihilated like a couple of generations on both sides. As for whether we have boots on the ground in Ukraine, I'm pretty confident we do.
Boots on the ground, meaning we got people there training. I think what we mean is like on the front line shooting guns. Maybe there's a British or American pushing a button on a missile somewhere. I guess that's possible. We're
Well,
certainly
they
there
were
training, right?
well with the SAS and the SBS really, 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 really do like to turn up with a load of funky new equipment that requires training of the
Yeah.
local
Yeah,
population.
yeah.
That's well documented historically.
Yeah.
So, I would be shocked beyond measure if there wasn't some British squaddy that wasn't lobbing some ordnance at a Russian someone in Ukraine.
Yeah, that's probably true. So yeah, I guess I could empathize them being upset that they're not as powerful as before. Empathize not as in not justifying anything. No, it does not matter that it used to be stronger. But I could see why they're upset.
Understand the position, but don't agree with it.
Yeah,
Like
and then I can
yeah.
also understand there's some individual Russians getting caught up in it, and that's too bad. But at the end of the day, that was probably true for Germany and Japan and Genghis Khan, right? Like every
Yeah.
person that's tried to conquer, there have been people. I can empathize for those people. Unfortunately, if you were fighting for Genghis Khan, the fact that you weren't really super on board with it didn't particularly matter if you were willing to go along with the conquering.
Hang on, sorry, Ukraine can't do stuff is a Russian Putin argument you just spoke. I never said Ukraine can't do stuff. There's somebody called Quaibush. Like,
Yeah.
like Ukraine are a very capable like first world nation. I never said they can't do stuff.
And if the war, let's just say, ends at some point or whatever, are you now okay with Ukraine joining NATO? It seems like they would have total justification to do so, seeing like because even though they got invaded and they would like to not get invaded in, so they should be allowed to. I mean, that Russia has sort of lost its sort of goodwill, as in, hey, you're not allowed to let Ukraine join NATO now that they invaded them, even though basically Russia broke the rules by invading before they joined NATO. So now that sort of agreement's sort of been torn apart, right?
Where I kind of, yeah, but I mean, where I see this ending is Ukraine not joining NATO, but there being some kind of international peacekeeping force which sits on whatever the new defined borders of Ukraine are going to be, because they're not getting back Donbass and Crimea. They're not like we're sort of like back into this First World War scenario where the front lines are moving like
Yeah,
half
whatever,
a football pitch.
but whatever the lines are, I agree. The
Yeah.
lines probably, whatever they end up being, seems like whatever Ukraine is left, whether it's all of it or a sliver of it, there's no way that Russia has the moral authority to go now. Don't let Ukraine join NATO, right? There's surely you don't think that surely they'd be allowed to, because like Russia doesn't care whether they join them or not. They'll invade them. They've shown that,
No,
right?
I think so. Putin sort of had, because of the resources he's spent, I think Putin has to go back to the Russian people with something. he can't just he can't give up Crimea and Donbass or like we've got thousands and thousands of soldiers that have been killed, billions of dollars and that have been
Sure, yeah.
spent.
Yeah.
So he has to go back. So no matter what happens, there's going to be some kind of face-saving exercise. I think for Ukraine, it's going to be, well, look, like the Donbass and Crimea were mostly Russian-speaking anyway. They wanted to go regardless. This is the new border, and we're going to put some kind of. It won't be a UN peacekeeper force because obviously Russia has a veto within the UN, as do China, who will vote along with Russia because they're buddies. So there's going to have to be some other kind of peacekeeping force that may
They should
well
just
be
join
made up.
NATO. Why wouldn't they just join NATO?
Yeah, but because
Because we're going to have the goodwill toward Russia? Come on now.
no, because part of the deal, in order for
We're going to keep
Putin
that deal now. That
no,
deal's done.
No. So what I'm saying is, Putin needs to be able to go back, I think, to the Russian people and go, look, we prevented Ukraine from joining NATO, and we have successfully carved back the people within Ukraine who wanted to be back as part of Russia. This is our win.
This
And-
is
and-
so much reward for too much reward for Russia.
Maybe
It's all good for them, and they can invade again tomorrow, and there would be nothing stopping.
Yeah,
They could wait
but-
a year and invade again. The only thing
but-
that's going to keep them from invading is if Ukraine joins NATO. Why wouldn't we
Well,
let Ukraine join NATO?
because you don't let them officially join NATO, but
Why
what you
not?
do, what you do is you put, say, for example, a German, French, British, and American peacekeeping force along the border, made up of soldiers from those nations.
I don't know
Which is
why
what
you're-
NATO, which is what NATO would do anyway, but
I
they're
don't know
not
why
officially a part of NATO.
I don't know why you're reticent to let them just officially join NATO. Why not? What's holding you back there?
Because you need to, in order to get Putin to stop aggressing, that's what you need to be able to let him go say to back to his people. So they end up being in like a not officially joining NATO, but they end up with a peacekeeping force on the border. Because
You're
I do
saying
not think
taking a big chunk of Ukraine isn't enough. That's not enough of a reward for them. They need even the bigger reward that we're going to promise again that Ukraine doesn't join NATO.
Well, I think the reason that it's important is because that's a big part of Putin's justification to his own people.
I mean, yeah, I guess you could negotiate that. I think that just basically told Putin this: you can invade it hard, as strong as you want. When you're done, you just get to freeze the line and take what you've taken. And your big punishment for this will be nothing. You can you can invade Ukraine again, and what will happen? Nothing.
So if there's a peacekeeping force on the border that is made up of French, German, American, and English and British soldiers, do you think Putin is actually going to start lobbing rounds at them?
I think
that's a bit different. There's a bit different than shooting at Ukrainians.
You're saying that France, and whoever else are going to leave their if Russia 2 years from now puts a whole bunch of soldiers and about ready to invade Ukraine, the French and the British and whoever else are going to sit there with their guns and go, well, we're just going to stay here, and if you kill us, I guess you're going to, but
no,
don't
because
do it.
It's the reaction that would get.
So you're basically saying they're going to be in NATO unofficially.
Yeah, because I think. What do you think? What do you think would happen if you've got a? I mean,
you are way too afraid of the country with the size of the economy of Spain. I am just not afraid of Russia at all.
I'm not particularly afraid of Russia in terms of its conventional military. I'm the bit of Russia that really does worry me is, as you said before, is the ability to turn the planet to glass.
Yeah, and what would happen to Putin if the planet turns to glass? He'll be dead. So why would he want to do that?
But this is the thing. Like we are, like you said before, we're trying to assess the motivations of a person, where they're internal to them. That we can't. He has, at minimum, I think, a motive for self-preservation.
So if he invaded Poland, would we go to war with them?
Poland's part of NATO. So
Okay, so why can't we just have the same thing for Ukraine? It just the nuke argument's still there, no matter what. We can't let it just
No.
be like, oh look, we have nukes, you can't stop us. We have nukes, you can't stop us. I don't see a big difference. But John, we'll have to argue about it again next week. Great talking to you. Maybe by next time you and I'll have different views on the whole thing. But I gotta go. I'm sorry. Normally I go
maybe.
till 1 o'clock. But we can discuss it some more. So
That's no worries.
good
I love
having
having
you.
these chats with you. So
Yeah,
they're good
yeah,
fun.
me too. Super fun. Thanks for everyone who joined in the chat. If you want to come on and provide your own opinion next week, and if anyone who just wants to come on next week and tell me how right I am about Five Guys fries being terrible, that'd be great. I'd really appreciate it. So anyway,
We've just got a Five Guys in where I live.
you like the
So,
fry?
yeah.
Now, when you send restaurants internationally, sometimes the fries aren't the same, so it may not be the
Well,
same. They
so
sometimes even have different ingredients or whatever, or different styles of.
so I've never had Five Guys burger and fries. So I will be having one soon, and I'll let you know. But from what I understand, like McDonald's, for example, so that they can maintain consistency across the whole of the UK, at least. I don't know if it's globally, but
McDonald's
they
is super consistent globally. I've eaten
yeah.
McDonald's all over the world. They do a really good job of being consistent. But some of the other restaurants, it's not quite the same.
But I certainly know in the UK that they require the farmers that they buy their potatoes from for their chips. They're a particular breed of potato, and they're sort of like a long tube-ish potato. The reason being is that then they get long fries, and then the consistency of the potato, the starch and everything that they grow. So they actually provide the potato to the farmers to farm so that they are completely ingrained within the entire supply chain. They're not just buying stuff from
The locals,
whoever.
right? Yeah, yeah. So I think that McDonald's does an incredible job of trying to stay consistent, and it's pretty impressive, really. I don't know if it's healthy impressive, but it is impressive in that they're able to pull off the logistics whole thing. All right, thank you all for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you again next week.